Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the first ever 15th episode of Baseball versus the World, a podcast about how baseball relates to the world and how the rest of the world relates to baseball, part of the Just Baseball Media Network. I am your host, as always, and guide on this maiden voyage through the vast cosmos of all things baseball, Javier Reyes, staff writer at justbaseball.com, as well as the host of the Locked On Padres podcasts. 15 episodes deep. We've been off for a little bit. I got sick. Some guests, not including the one I had today, canceled on me because the one I have today is oh so special, folks. Oh so special. And I've said before, I only, you have to understand, I only allow the most illustrious of guests on this show. It is a new face from the Just Baseball empire. It is Harrison Bruns, staff writer here of Just Baseball. You might have seen his work before, but you may not have seen him on camera before. And we are here to change that. Harrison, how you doing, man?
I'm great. That was electric.
Look, it's what I do. I got to hype up every single guest that's on this show to make them not regret coming on this show, because that's usually what happens like 20 minutes into it. So I got to start off with some goodwill, get the the gears rolling, and we're all good and whatnot. First of all, Harrison, tell everybody about what you do for Just Baseball. What are your teams, and what is kind of your specifics when it comes to baseball?
Yeah, for sure. I do my best to try and cover the Orioles and the Twins for Just Baseball. I've been an Orioles fan my entire life, pretty much, and then I kind of adopted the Twins. Moved from Baltimore to Minnesota when I was pretty young in third grade, and so sort of adopted the Twins, and they've got a close place in my heart. But yeah, I do my best to cover those teams, and then help out a little bit here and there with just other projects that get tossed my way. I just put out two pieces on. Well, one's out now. The second one should be out in probably tomorrow, which would be, I guess, September 12th. On AL contenders and like the best IL player that they're going to bring back to the playoffs. And then the NL side should come out, like I said, September 12th. And so stuff like that. But I do my best.
Absolutely love to see it. Especially, and what's fun about Harrison, which people don't know, and the reason he's on today's episode, and today's episode is about movies. I forgot how, but I discovered that Harrison is a member of the Letterboxd Mafia. And I just was like, you know what? One of the things that we want to do on this show here at Just Baseball, and then this specific show, is I'm trying to highlight all the other great people we have over at Just Baseball Media, because it's not just Aram and Jack and Peter and Ryan Finkelstein and those dorks. No, there's also a bunch of other people who are really doing awesome work, and Harrison is one of them. And he is a movie guy. And I've liked seeing some of his stuff that he's logged, and I decided to do for today's episode, we are going to be picking a movie that best represents kind of the vibe, current state, the aura, whatever you want to call it, of every single major league team, all 30, starting with the American League and then going to the National League. And there's a possibility that people are not going to understand every reference on this episode. And to those people, I say, skill issue. You know what I mean? Like get into it, watch some movies. You know what I mean? But no, in all seriousness,
get in the lab, pull a movie up.
Exactly. And if anything, I feel like basically, at least I don't know about you, Harrison, but every movie I have on here is at least worth watching, I think. So
I would agree.
We're giving some movie recommendations. Why not? So this is the weirdest movie recommendation list people have probably ever gotten before. And this is Baseball versus the World. And we like to get astronomically weird on here. Harrison, would you like to begin, sir?
I can. Okay, are we starting?
Good question, actually. Because on this podcast, we do not like having the East Coast bias, we are going to start not with the American League East. That is the number one thing we won't do. Instead, let's start with the AL West, and we'll work back to the AL Central, and then the AL East. Then we'll get to National League, et cetera, et cetera. It's just a dumb petty rule because everyone starts off with Yankees and stuff, you know.
I respect it. Everybody does start with the Yankees, and it shouldn't be that way.
Exactly. I don't want to be like Mad Dog Russo on First Take or anything like that. Let's actually show people we know ball. Let's start with the AL West and start with, I guess we should go in order of division lead. I just thought of that now. But currently in first place in the National League, or I'm sorry, the American League West is none other than the Houston Astros. Harrison, you are the guest of honor. What is your movie for these lovely team that a lot of people seem to hate?
Okay. So full disclosure, I'm looking at this movie, and when I wrote this and drew this up,
Yeah.
I'm going to stick with the movie, but I don't know if it fits as well now. When
Okay.
I wrote this,
Okay.
I think they were a game or two out of a playoff spot. And so
Okay.
my movie for the Houston Astros was Kung Fu Panda 4. Um,
Okay.
and reason being is it looks like this could likely be the end of this Astros dynasty that we've seen, stretch what feels like almost a decade. I don't think it's quite been that long, but it feels like it's spanned almost a decade. And while there have been good teams, Kung Fu Panda 4, it's good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Is it as good as the original Kung Fu Panda? Not really.
No, yeah.
But it's good. And so my thought process was, kind of the sun setting on what we've known the Houston Astros to be over the course of the last 8 years or so.
Yeah, I mean, nobody likes to admit it, but they kind of run shit when it comes to baseball, at least since like 2017. Shut up. I am so tired of the trash can jokes. Whatever. I get it, but they really do run it, right? And they have been. I know that like the Dodgers are the fan base and team that pretends that they run the sport and they have to like self-flagellate and like hype up their players all the time, even though you're not as good as you claim to be. But I think that's fine. Yes. Removing the curtain for a second, Harrison and I have been playing this for a long time. so that's probably why that one doesn't totally fit in the sense that the Astros are now leading. They're 77-67, 10 games above 500. So they've been actually playing a lot of good ball lately. No. But I do think the sentiment is there, and it kind of connects to my personal pick, which is 2006's Rocky Balboa. Okay. So kind of the same thing here. And basically what I'm going for is a legend, a Oscar-winning franchise, famous movies. Basically, you can't find anyone who hasn't seen Rocky or at least heard of it. Yeah. And Rocky Balboa comes out, and it's moderately well received. It's still pretty good. It's past its prime, but somehow he's still got it. I mean, if you want to dive into the actual thing of the movie, Rocky's like 55 years old or whatever in this movie, and somehow he's still got it. And frankly, it won't shock anyone if he wins. Same thing for the Astros. I won't be shocked if the Astros win the World Series again, because 100%. That's just what it seems to go down.
No, that's perfect.
Thank you. I'm proud of it. So let's just keep moving on. With the Seattle Mariners, one of the teams that I only thought of a movie literally right before we started recording. And it's a little bit of a lazy one because it doesn't really capture where they are right now. 73-72 on the year, one game above 500. They've kind of collapsed as of late. That's been the whole story. They had the lead in the division and they fell apart. Who wouldn't thunk that not having an offense might make you susceptible to falling apart at some point? But I went for kind of a general vibe, which is that the Seattle Mariners organization, if no one has watched Secret Base's History of the Seattle Mariners, I highly recommend it. In my opinion, one of the best baseball movies ever made. It's a great documentary. Go check it out. And that's why I went with Extremely Lazy. So I just thought of what's the weirdest but also good movie that I have seen. And I picked Sorry to Bother You, directed by Boots Riley, starring Lakeith Stanfield. All I thought of was good movie that is weird as hell. And I'm also not always convinced that it's good. I think it's a little obnoxious sometimes, just like the fan base can be. Like it's good, and I'm glad it exists, right? Yeah. Like I'm super glad it exists, but I think that it could be a little bit much. Like I think it's super weird. It's super worth watching, but I'm also like, I get it. Like you guys are weird. All right, I get it. Capitalism bad. You know what I mean?
I quote that movie on an almost daily basis. So
excellent.
So, and for coming up with that last second, that's a solid pick. I think similar sentiment, but I think I went a little bit of a different route. With like certain movies, there are some movies that like you go see that are good, but like at the end of the day, I'm probably never going back to watch that movie ever again.
Okay.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, solid movie, rewatch value, not all the way there.
And I've got one on here that I saw recently that I'm never watching again. I promise you. I can't wait till we get to that.
Yeah. And so that was my sentiment with the Mariners was, I very rarely do I tune into a Mariners game. I'm sorry, Mariners fans. You know what I mean? And so I went with The Favorite. It came out in 2018 with Emma Stone.
Yes. Okay.
It
I
is
love
a
Emma.
good movie, a movie
Mhm.
that I enjoyed the first time I watched it. I don't know if I will watch The Favorite again anytime in the near future.
Mhm.
And so that was more my thought with, that movie. If you have not seen The Favorite, I highly recommend it. It's a great movie.
Mhm.
I just don't think a ton of rewatch value is there, and that's sort of how I feel about the Mariners.
Yeah, I totally get that. I've actually not seen The Favorite, which makes me sad because I am a Emma Stone season ticket holder. Big fan of her. You know, Yorgos Lanthimos. Everyone loves his movies. Pretty
Yes.
good, but yeah, weird is
Weird.
kind of the way that we
Yeah.
describe the Mariners. And we could do a movie about falling apart and choking. We could do that. We
Yeah.
could talk about I don't know what's a movie about like falling apart and like
I'm
Contagion. You know
okay.
what I mean? Like just like
Okay.
people who just blew it. You know what I mean? I gotta think of one. I can't think of one off the top of my head. But Mariners not doing great right now. But I do respect your weirdness, and I do respect that. Again, everyone, I emphasize, please go watch the Mariners documentary. I literally showed it to my mom like earlier this year, and it's now her second favorite team next to the Yankees. Like it is actively, it is one of the craziest things ever when you look into the history of that franchise. So weird. Shouts to the people over at Secret Base. Um, let's move on to the next one though. The Texas Rangers, last year's World Series champions. I don't feel good about my picks for this one. Harrison, do you have anything? You feeling anything good for this one? Because this was a hard one for me.
Mine's pretty ridiculous.
Okay.
I went with and this is, you'll notice like a theme. You've already seen it with me saying Kung Fu Panda 4 for the Houston
Okay.
Astros. I have kind of abused like the sequel
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
trope a little, and so I went with Next Friday.
Oh yes.
And so if you haven't seen the original Friday movie, it is excellent. It's a like Ice Cube created a smash hit. It was, very well received. And then next Friday, he loses Chris Tucker, brings in Mike Epps. And I like, as somebody who likes Mike Epps, this is no shade at Mike Epps. It just didn't quite hit the same.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
No,
so,
I get that.
and that's how I feel about this Ranger season, is it just doesn't quite hit the same.
This is an excellent pick. It's funny because the one thing I will say about the Rangers is, unlike that movie, I feel like it was expected that a sequel like that would be bad. So I'm trying to think of like a sequel that was bad that you didn't necessarily like see it coming. You know
That's
what I mean?
fair.
Like I'm trying to think because Godfather 3, but it's the third one and they just won last year. It's tough, but I like what you're hitting at here. I went for a really dumb one, which is Bleed for This. This
Okay.
is a Miles Teller boxing movie in which he gets into like a giant, like crazy car accident after being on top of the world and then
Okay.
has to work his way back from it. So basically, what I'm saying is the Rangers were world champions and completely cratered this year. Basically, every player more or less regressed, with the exception of a couple,
Yeah.
and they're working their way back because as we speak, they have Jacob deGrom coming back,
Yeah.
Kumar Rocker coming back. I think Jack Leiter is going to pitch or something like that. So it's like they're working their way back from injury after being on top of the world. That's, am I stretching it a little bit? Maybe, but that's what we do here on the show.
You got it. Yeah. There's some stretches in here.
Because there's some bad sequels out there, man. You ever seen Speed 2? My God. Oh, my Lord. You know what I mean? Like Caddyshack 2, Sandlot 2, Independence Day 2. There's some bad sequels out there.
There's some out there.
There's some tough ones out there. But that's what I'm going for. Bleed for This with Miles Teller. Probably the least seen Miles Teller movie that I could think of. And I also have not seen it. But don't tell anybody. Either. Next up is surprisingly not a team that is not in last place, but they feel like they're in last place when it comes to the things that matter. That is the Oakland Athletics, soon to be Sacramento minor league stadium A's, whatever. I decided with this one, I think that it's easy to say, let's just go with whatever the most depressing movie is you've ever seen.
Okay.
I did that, but I went instead with a movie that's dark and dystopic, but it's like there's still a feeling like it's still on the horizon because they are still playing in Oakland. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? For now, and they
Yeah.
haven't moved to Vegas or whatever. And frankly, I don't know if it's going to happen, but we'll see. So I went with Children of Men, very famous movie, and basically my thinking is everything is in hell right now, and I thought of the scene of like when they're watching the TV, seeing things get worse. I imagine that's what it's like being an A's fan, where technically it hasn't ended, but you're just waiting for it, right?
Yeah.
Has it? For those who don't know, Children of Men, it's a really like classic elevator pitch movie where like someone comes in, here's the concept, you're like, oh, I'm in. Like that's perfect. It's about how no one has given birth in like 50, 60 years. And we're all like, so this is it. The human race is just going to be extinct. And that's kind of the vibe. The A's are about to be extinct, but it hasn't quite happened yet, but it's still depressing. And you're watching everything crumble. Harrison, what do you think? And what's your pick?
So I went, I see where you're going. I went a little bit of a different route, and I just nabbed, and there's a lot of people who have seen this movie. I nabbed one of my least favorite movies of all time. And it probably in retrospect isn't as bad as I think it is. But
I can't wait. Yeah.
I went with Percy Jackson, The Lightning Thief.
Oh, man. Brutal. Logan Lerman, my boy.
Okay, but wait, hold on. He plays a role in this too, okay? Right? This movie sucks. I do not like this movie at all. However, despite being hot garbage, there's still Logan Lerman and Alexander Daddario who are, oh my God. All right. So, as I was saying, Percy had some star power.
All right. Yeah. So Percy Jackson has a little bit of star power, right? Mm-hmm. Logan Lerman and Alexander Daddario are good actors in their own right. This movie sucks. They're good actors. The A's suck. But Jacob Wilson, Lawrence Butler, Mason Miller, they have good baseball players. Like there are good baseball players there, but that doesn't change the fact that the A's are a dumpster fire, and I stand on that.
I mean, you're not wrong. They are indeed a dumpster fire. First of all, folks, if you've heard some like weird pauses and whatnot, it's because we had a myriad of ridiculous things occur that, frankly, I'm just going to leave it at that. I think people could use their imagination. I think it's very funny what happened. But, it's funny. When the new Disney Plus series was coming out, I watched, I was like, you know what? I have this weird, warmth towards that movie. And this is why nostalgia is dangerous, guys. So I started rewatching it. The acting, I don't know if it's their fault. Maybe, they're a little bit younger at the time. But after Percy's, spoiler alert, his mom dies very early on in the story. He wakes up in that cabin thing on the lake and he's like, oh no way. It's the weirdest reaction I've ever seen anyone have to their parent dying. Genuinely atrocious. The acting's bad. It's just not good. I had a little bit of a weird, because I saw it in middle school and it was wow. It was one of the first movies where I read the book before I even knew the movie was coming out. Yep. So I was like, oh, I was there first. So not a good movie. TV series a bit better, significantly better than the movie. But yeah, man, I totally see you on that. But I'm sick, of course, with Children of Men, as we said before, just because it is apocalyptic out there. But the Oakland A's fan base, if you need a hug, just give me a call. I understand. I feel you. Now, this team, arguably in terms of just in a vacuum, even more dire than the Oakland A's, not in terms of all the extenuating things, but just on field performance wise. It is the Los Angeles Angels, last team of this division. Harrison, let me tell you, this was one that I knew I had to nail, and it gives me no pleasure to give this one. Okay. And it is from one of the great filmmakers, I think, of our time, a filmmaker who is extremely boomerified, in the sense that I don't think a lot of his ideas translate or are sensible in today's society. I think that he has some weird stuff. Go look up the controversies around the movie Richard Jewell. It is from Mr. Clint Eastwood, Oscar winner, that people might regret that we gave an Oscar. $1 Million Baby for the Los Angeles Angels. it is up there for one of the most depressing movies you will ever watch. Spoiler alert for everybody. Harrison, if you haven't seen it, it's a good movie, but it basically looks like it is this female boxer who Clint Eastwood's character is training to be a champion and whatnot. And it's basically like a not fun, but like a really rugged, just bedraggled, like underdog story. And then there's a twist. And everyone who's seen this movie knows this thing it's just like, I don't know what the point of it was, almost. Like, this is, dare I say, like, nihilistic movie about, like, everything sucks. That's what it feels like. Basically what happens is the boxer, forgot the name of the actress's name, a cheap shot basically occurs, and it, like, permanently damages her, so then she kills herself by biting her tongue. And here's basically how I'm tying it back to the Angels. The Angels had the $1 million baby and still do, and Mike Trout, and they freaking ruined him.
That's spot on.
To the point where he's literally injured as we speak and destroyed and has nothing to live for, but be very, very clear. It's not that dark over there. But I'm just saying, like, the Angels actively destroyed and ruined this person, and Mike Trout, a great, at one point, up-and-comer. He's still going to be a Hall of Famer, don't get me wrong. He's not biting his tongue off or whatever. But holy dear God, this is one of those movies, just look up the Wikipedia thing if you just want to know what happened at the end, because I don't necessarily know if I could recommend it. It's got some weird racial politics problems in it too as well. Shocker for or not Quentin Tarantino. Did I say Quentin Tarantino? Clint Eastwood. That's what I meant. Although he's not above racial problems in his movies too. Let me be very clear. But just a mess. And if anybody's seen that movie, you'll understand what I'm talking about. That's my pick for the Los Angeles Angels. Angels fans, I'm sorry.
Okay, I went again, different route. This is a movie I haven't seen in a while, but a classic that I'm sure a lot of people have seen. I rolled with Groundhog Day.
Okay, yeah.
If you are an Angels fan, I think you have to be asking yourself, like, when is this going to end? And it has to feel like the same thing every single season. And like, if I were an Angels fan, I don't think I'd know what to do with myself. Like, I would feel like I am just trapped in this never-ending cycle of, we had the best player in the world for a really long time and really didn't do anything with it. We had the best player in the world and the second best player in the world on the same team for a while, and we didn't do anything with it. And now, like, you know, you can't consider Mike Trout the best player in the world anymore, but he's still Mike Trout, and it's just like that. And then on top of that, like, the whole, like, consistently drafting, you know, a major league ready bat, and then being like, okay, you had 20 games in AA, you're coming up. Like, I think as an Angels fan, like, you have to see that and just be like, no. Like, the Nolan Schanuel thing has to just, like, drive Angels fans insane.
The Brandon Marsh thing, like, they brought him up, and he's like, he's not a star. He's like an okay player. They just got rid of him. Raisel Iglesias got rid of him. Like, it is.
Every time they do something, I, like, think to myself, like, what? And so that was why I went with that.
I think what's so fascinating about them is that they're not just incompetent ownership like the A's, where the A's is like, the A's, there's a reason why the A's, like, kind of have this edge and, like, narrative to them about how despite having a low budget, they find ways to compete. The Angels have the bad owner, and they aren't able to develop talent. And they shell out money, by the way. Like, this is a team that paid for Albert Pujols, paid for Josh Hamilton. The fact that they were able to waste Mike Trout and show it, we're not talking about winning a pennant. We're not even talking about making the second round. We're just like, can you make the playoffs? We want to see Mike Trout play in the playoffs. It happened once. Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout have combined for one playoff appearance. Dodgers, and it's almost like why I can't fault the Dodgers and why I can't fault Ohtani. Like, guys, it's a little bit like LeBron leaving for Miami. Like, have you seen the incompetence that man has been working with? Like, is it annoying? Yes. Is it not as fun? Yes. but like I can't blame him. You know what I'm saying? So I
Exactly.
absolutely feel you on that one. I've just been going so dark compared to you. I've just been Million Dollar Baby, Children of Men. Like, I don't know if I have quite as many dark ones, but we're still. Oh no, yes, I do. And it is with this next division. It is going to be the last place White Sox where it gets dark. But Harrison, that is it for AL West. Let's begin with the AL Central, starting with the division leading Cleveland Guardians. What do you got for this one?
All right, listen, I'm gonna get hate from Guardians fans if they do this. Like, but I stand on this point. I think that this is just the truth. I went with Saltburn because that movie was, in my opinion, wildly overrated. Like that movie was like, I think it's the like Jacob Elordi effect, right? Like I think him and Glenn Powell are two completely different actors, but I think they have that similar like I guess it is just like sex appeal. Like I think people hear like Jacob Elordi in a movie and it's like, oh, I got it.
Yeah,
like, we got to get on this. And it's like Glenn Powell in a movie. I'm there. Like, and so I think him and Barry Cohegan were fine in that movie. I think they were great. I like wrote down, I have them as like metaphors for Stephen Kwan and Jose Ramirez. Great players.
Okay.
Like,
this is good. Yeah.
Baseball players. But I think the Guardians are overrated. I wrote a little bit of an article about like, could the Twins catch them? Now I think it's out of reach. But like at the time, if you like looked at the Guardians, and I think if you still do look at the Guardians, they're outperforming in a lot of ways. I'm not quite sure this team is as good as its win total, and I do not think Saltburn is as good as it was received.
Totally fair. I will push back only that, was it received well? Was it? Are we sure?
Yeah. You know what? I think that is a fair.
The problem is, I got it. I have my theory on this. I think people are confusing interesting with good. Yeah, it is an objectively interesting movie with big stars in it. The same way Promising Young Woman, also from Emerald Fennell, same director, is like a really interesting. Like I didn't leave this. I didn't see Saltburn, by the way, but I did see Promising Young Woman. I didn't leave that movie going, that was amazing, but I did go like, at least it was interesting. Like I'll remember it. You know what I mean? At least it's like memorable. Yeah, in an era of like, hey, let's do the 7th Ghostbusters movie, a franchise that we have to pretend is interesting, like stuff like that. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people are like, this is weird. And it's kind of like, I know about the grave scene at the end. That's all I know. That's all I know about that movie.
I might be this could be a case of like construing like the level of attention that the movie got with that being perceived as like I guess a good reception. Granted, I didn't see a ton of like negative things about Saltburn, but this is also fair. Yeah, it just got a ton of attention, and I was kind of like, Guardians. So.
Totally get that. I am also going with you on the overrated bandwagon. I had another nominee, which is Real Steel, in the sense, and that one was just like kind of low key movie that was really fun. And you know what? I'm gonna watch it tonight because I love that movie so much. Shouts to my guy Chris. If you are watching this, he is the only one with me on Real Steel Island. That movie has so much heart, and it like doesn't like make me cry, but I'm like, yes, like I need a movie like this every now and then. It's just crowd pleaser. But I'm not going with that. I am going with the overrated bandwagon in the sense that I think there's a lot of teams that fit this criteria of like teams that get a lot of attention from the media, teams that get a lot of attention from them. And then you're like, but is it actually that good? Cleveland Guardians. Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong. They've changed. They have spent a little bit more money than usual. They are not the Brewers or the Rays, who we will get into later. But there is this feeling of like, can we talk about how like they never make a World Series? Now the Guardians have, right? Yeah. Unlike some other teams. But like, why are we praising these teams more than the Rangers? The Rangers at least won. You know what I'm saying? Like they won the thing. So I'm going with the same thing, which is overrated. And I got an even spicier one for you, man. You think that I'm no. Oh, I've got on this one. I was deciding between two. My two most infamous picks. Interstellar is my pick. I think it is a good movie. I just feel like that movie is shouting at me. Every scene of it, trying to make everything grand and so important and so much exposition and so much like there's a fellow for The Ringer named Sean Fennessy who's with me on this. He wrote like a good Letterboxd review that it sums it up better than me, but it's just a movie that is like it wants to explain and try and yell at you about how grand everything is without me
Yeah.
ever actually feeling it.
Yeah.
There's some really good stuff in there. The Matthew McConaughey acting is
Mhm.
phenomenal. Anne Hathaway's good in it. I like the spoiler alert, the Matt Damon cameo, by sheer factor of just it's kind of impressive that you can hide a movie star
Yeah.
ever. Like I'm always just impressed in that. Like we'll get into a pick of mine that has to do with that later. That's my pick. The other pick is another infamous one, although it's not as highly rated. I think in the traditional like film people don't necessarily rate it as high because it's a comedy, and that's Step
Yeah.
Brothers. Step
Okay.
Brothers is my other overrated movie pick,
Okay.
and you could say that Jose Ramirez and Stephen Kwan, they're the two dynamic duo,
Yeah,
I guess.
I mean, Step Brothers gets thrown around when you start talking about comedies, people are quick
I
to
know.
throw out Step
I
Brothers.
know. I know people are not necessarily film critic people, but people are. And for me, I've just never been a Will Ferrell guy. My favorite Will Ferrell movie is one that's not a comedy. It's called Stranger Than Fiction. I recommend everyone check it out.
Okay.
But for me, it's just like that movie would have been so much better. It's such a good concept and starting ground for a comedy. John C. Reilly is a great actor.
Yeah.
Tone it down a little bit. If they just toned it down, I genuinely think that movie would have been so much better.
Yeah.
And my theory, to get mean, is that our generation loves it because it was the first R-rated movie that people started seeing before they were allowed to. I feel
Okay,
like that's
yeah.
what people do.
Okay.
They hype up the R-rated movie because they want to show off that they snuck and saw an R-rated movie when they're technically not supposed to. But I
You
digress.
talked about the power of nostalgia not that long ago, and I
Yeah.
think I think I'm with you. I think that is, like, people our age, I think that is probably one of the first R-rated movies that they had seen, and just kind of cling to that. And like when you were like 13, that movie was hilarious.
Yeah, exactly. I think Dodgeball is like this, except Dodgeball is I still stand by it. I still think Dodgeball is really good. I still stand by Dodgeball, but it was like around the same time. I can't decide between those two because Interstellar feels more like, because the Guardians are a good team, like in terms of like
100%.
and I think
yeah.
Interstellar is a little bit like that. You know what I'm saying?
I
But
like
it's hard for me to decide.
I like the
Interstellar?
Interstellar comparison a lot. I think that's really good because it is very, like, you can tell that it is attempting to be very grandiose in every scene, and every scene is like feels like it should be the most important scene in the movie, and it's kind of like so I 100% agree with you. I think that's a good one.
Thank you, sir. Let's move on to the Royals now. Kansas City, second place, surprisingly. Second place team, 80-66. They've been on a roll, and a lot of people thought that they were going to regress and whatnot. Instead, they've been kind of one of the surprises of the year. Who do you have for Kansas City Royals?
This is one of my personal favorite picks on the list. I'm a big fan of this one. And so I went with, I don't think a lot of people have seen this movie, A24. It came out in 2023, just came out last year.
Okay.
I saw it in theaters, and it was me, my girlfriend, and one other person in the theater. And that movie is Dream Scenario with Nicolas Cage.
Yes, sir. I saw it. Yes, sir.
Okay, excellent. And the reason, so if you've seen the movie, honestly, I thought it was super underrated. I thought that this was a really good movie with a really interesting concept to it. Like, it's not the best movie I've ever seen, but I liked it a lot. And I think it ties into the Royals because if you've seen the movie, it starts with like people are having these dreams. Nicolas Cage plays a college professor. Yep. And his students start to see him in their dreams, have these weird dreams where he's just there.
Yeah.
And then it becomes this phenomenon where it starts to spread slowly. And it becomes at first it's a local phenomenon. And then it becomes this national phenomenon where people are having dreams about him. And as the movie progresses, the dreams get progressively worse and worse before they turn into nightmares where people are seeing Nicolas Cage's character in their dreams as a nightmarish figure. The Royals started this season really quirky and fun, and it was oh my God, the Royals are good. And now, if I'm a team, I am terrified of the Royals. They are maybe the you talk about obviously the Royals are going to be far from the best team that makes the playoffs. But you want to talk about the teams in the bottom half that you don't want to see. For me, that's the Royals. I would be terrified to see the Royals in the postseason, And that's where I think they tie into this movie. I think people by the end of this movie, people are terrified of Nicolas Cage. And by the end of this season, I am now terrified of the Royals. And so that was why I went with this.
I love this pick. First of all, I really like Jeep Scenario too. There was a couple things where I was like, the relationship with that girl, that was like
weird.
It was weird, and like I don't know what you were I don't know if you were trying to be funny weird, where it's like this is so stupid, it's gonna it's supposed to be like dark comedy.
Yeah.
I just don't know what that subplot was.
Yeah.
I don't know everything they were gonna say. Maybe at the end it got a little bit on the nose with him embracing being bad and whatnot, and then the influencer thing. I don't fully know. Maybe I'm just not smart enough. I don't know. But I do like some of the things it does. I like the ending overall. Really messed up movie. Not as fun as you would think it is, especially because it's Nicolas Cage. And you're usually expecting some like fun ridiculousness. But I like that. It started off like kind of fun. And now everyone's like, oh God, I'm like terrified of them. Like I actually don't want to face them.
Yeah.
Really like that. This was one of the ones that I struggled with a lot.
Okay.
On the one hand, I said, what's like a one-man movie? Right?
Oh,
like what's a movie that's just like,
Yeah.
you got Bobby Witt Jr. literally having the best shortstop season ever, at least according to like Fangraphs F4.
Yeah.
So I thought of something like Escape from LA with my boy Russell, Kurt Russell. Low-key, good movie though. And that's what I'm saying, where it's like, it's got the star that's like on another level, Snake Plissken.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that eye patch. There's so many ripoffs of that character, like so many movies for years to go. It's apparently, the Metal Gear Solid games are based off of that character and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. But then low key, there's some other surrounding parts that are pretty good. So that was my thinking there. Or I just went with a simple thing, which is just a movie that I was surprised was as good as it was. And I have two for that. And that is Warrior with Tom Hardy and Joel Edgerton. And then Edge of Tomorrow with the GOATs, Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt. Now on Netflix, actually, if anyone was looking for just a grand old time at the theater. What do you think between those kind of match up the best, if you have any? I like how I'm like asking you for help with my picks.
God, I have seen Edge of Tomorrow, but I feel like it's been it's been a long time. And I have not seen Warrior, so I cannot offer any thoughts to you there.
You know what? Let's go with Escape from LA because it's cooler. Let's just go with that one. That movie rules, man. It's just cool. And I do stand by it, which is like it is an action movie, but like it's really, really, really good. If I'm not mistaken, it's a John McTiernan movie too. Who's a famous director. Or is it Escape from New York is what I meant. That's the good one. Not Escape from LA. I believe it's Escape from New York.
Okay.
Whichever is the first one. I forgot. I forgot which is the first one.
I'm pretty
bad
sure.
Yeah, speaking of bad sequels, because Escape from LA, I'm pretty sure is the bad one. Basically, it takes place in like a future where crime ran amok and bad politics stuff happened, and New York is now just where they house all the inmates and prisoners.
Gotcha.
But like there's clearly some really interesting subtext about how like the government's really bad and like it has like really interesting ideas. So that's what I'm saying. You got the one main lead who's amazing and iconic, but then there's some good pieces. You got your Seth Lugo, you got your Michael Waka. You've got like some contributing pieces that make them an interesting team. So that's what I'm gonna go with, especially because you haven't seen Warrior and you barely remember Edge of Tomorrow. So that's what we're gonna go with. Next up, the Minnesota Twins. This one was hard for me. I went with just a movie with a lot of expectations. I think that this team, and granted those expectations I think are predicated heavily on how much we projected Byron Buxton for so long, and the 1 year he started to stay a little bit healthy, he just couldn't hit really. But it's still pretty good, or at least it's good, right? Like it's a lowercase g good. I'm gonna go with We Bought a Zoo. For those who don't know, We Bought a Zoo was like at the time like one of the most anticipated like movies for like film lovers for a while, because it's Cameron Crowe, who's a director of one of my 5 to 10 favorite movies ever, in Almost Famous. And it has Matt Damon, it has Scarlett Johansson, it has all sorts of really good, Elle Fanning is in this movie too, Thomas Hayden Church is in this movie, a lot of stuff. And instead, it's just not all that great, but it's not terrible either. That's what I came with. I don't know though. I don't know. I know my mom loves it because my mom is a sappy little wuss. You know what I mean? So she loves it. But
you are onto something with that, because I remember like Like, I was young because I like vividly remember my father taking me and my sister to see that movie in a movie theater, like it
Yeah.
being like, oh, We Bought a Zoo came out, we're going to see it. Like, and I don't like, I like thinking about it now, I'm like, why did that movie have such high expectations? And like when it came out, it was very talked about,
Yeah.
which is just crazy. Oh,
Another one
man.
for that could be like what's another high expectations movie? Like Ali with Will Smith, which I still haven't seen. That's
Yeah.
another one that like I'm gonna go with Ali instead, actually, because Ali has better ratings with Will
Okay.
Smith. But like that
Yes.
movie's
Yes.
written by like great script writers and it's directed
Mhm.
by Michael Mann, one of my favorite directors. For those who don't know, he did Heat, he did Collateral. He's like a
Mhm.
great thriller movie. So one of those two movies, basically big expectations, and it's still good, but it looked like it could have been something special at one point. And I feel like the Twins, unfortunately, are just a good team that just have never been able to put it together fully.
Yeah.
And they also just get overlooked because they get destroyed by the Yankees every year.
Okay. Well, that's a great transition because that was the route I went, was the injuries. And
Okay.
so this is simple to the point. I don't got a lot to say on it. I went this is ridiculous. I went with Big Hero 6 because Baymax might be the only thing capable of keeping the Twins healthy. Like
Yo.
like they just need, like, somebody needs to just shoot off into the future and come back with a couple of Baymax units, and then maybe the Twins will stay healthy enough to be competitive in the postseason. Because it is insane. It's every year, and I don't know like how or why. And it's like not only is it every year, but then it's like the people that they draft and like develop, like Buxton, like super highly touted prospect, comes up, number one overall pick, comes up, can never stay healthy. He's got, I think, I think he has a single season. He's been in the league like 8 years now. He's got a single season over 100 games played. And then Royce Lewis, same
another
thing.
one.
Number one overall, I believe he was number one overall pick, highly touted prospect, the number one prospect in baseball at one point, comes up, cannot find a way to stay healthy. And it's just it drives me insane. And so I went with Big Hero 6 because the Twins need a Baymax.
Baymax, that dude will beat up the Avengers, I swear. He was throwing punches in that movie, man. My guy could not be stopped. He was on a mission
love
in that movie. Shouts to Baymax. I haven't seen that one in a while. It's really cool. And also, I love when animated movies like that have like just low-key amazing action sequences. You know what I mean? Like it just looks amazing. Incredibles 2 was like this, where Incredibles 2 had like some incredible fight scenes that I'm like, this is amazing.
It bothers. I feel like animation, like this drive for like live action movies, I think animation has just gotten overlooked, and it makes me a little sad. Because I think there's some beautiful animated
where
movies.
I'm just like, this brings the heat, man. Especially if you guys are just gonna make your like some of these superhero movies, if you're gonna just use an over excess of CGI, it's like, can we just do it animated then?
Yeah,
because it's gonna look better and it'll have the heart. But that's for
agree
another
100%.
episode. Not to go full film nerd on this, but totally feel that. Let's move on to now the Detroit Tigers. Fourth place. This one, I wrote this down and I don't fully remember my thinking behind it, but I chose a movie called The Gray. And it is a movie about a basically, oh, I remember now. It's a movie, it's with Liam Neeson. It's
Okay, I was
about,
like, you said that, and I was like, does he say, like, is he talking about what I think he's talking about?
Yeah.
Like, I was like waiting for you to drop the Liam Neeson thing, so I was like, that would give it away. But yes, okay, I know where you're going.
My direction is basically what happens is it's a crew that gets into a plane accident, I believe, and they're stuck in the middle of like some forest, and there's a bunch of wolves that are after them, and they have to try and get away from them. And the way I see it is the Javier Baez contract is the plane. And the remaining tigers are trying to survive. And I don't want to fully spoil every movie on here, so skip the next 15 seconds if you don't want spoilers. They don't survive. They don't make it, right? They try their best, and there's still some high quality people in there. Like they do some work. They try their best, including Liam Neeson at the end. You know, you've got your Riley Greens, you got your Spencer Torkelsons, but it did not amount to it. That's what I'm going with. I'm sorry, Detroit Tigers fans.
Yeah, listen, I hear you. But again, went a different direction. I went with again a movie that I think a lot of people have seen. It was very similar to Saltburn. This movie got a ton of attention on the internet, and I went with "Don't Worry, Darling," starring Florence Pugh and Harry Styles. And I went with that because I see the Detroit Tigers as a very young and promising team with some superstar power. I think Florence Pugh is one of, if not like the best actress that is consistently active at this moment in time, right? Like, if you ignore you, I mean, Angela Bassett's still like active. Like, there's some
there's so many, but like ones who are in movies a lot. Like, they're still stars right now.
Yes, like she is consistently finding work right now and is like in her prime as an actress. I think she is the best actress, arguably, in the world. Terrence
I think you're right, man.
Has an argument for best picture on the planet, right? And like, he's got an argument.
Okay.
And I think that obviously there was other talent in that movie. There were good actors in that movie, a good supporting cast. Unfortunately, and people may disagree with me, in this case, I think Harry Styles is Javier Baez. I think he drags that movie down rather significantly. I thought that could have been a really good movie if it weren't for Harry Styles, and that's kind of how I feel about Javi Baez and his contract, right? And it was Javi Baez, it was that, and then the only other knock I'll make on the movie is, if you haven't seen the movie, this might ruin a little bit of it. It was very Get Out-esque. I felt like I just watched like a Get Out repeat.
But like not as good or as poignant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know about like the twist at the end. I don't want to spoil it, only because I don't fully know it. I like this one, man. I'm going to go further. And one thing that happens is the weak link kind of went viral. Like, there's a viral clip. What happened with this movie? You had the viral clip of the Spitgate incident, right? What happened with the Tigers? People still talk about, at least in the baseball world, the viral clip of Javier Baez swinging at a pitch that's like out. Like, it's like 8 feet away from the plate.
It's like a slider that bounces in the left-handed batter's box.
It's that, and then they have one where he swings and the ball is all the way at the end, like all the way in your apartment, like all the way back at that wall, and he already swung, like out of a cartoon. And then where it started getting a lot of like attention because of that one clip of like, oh, did he spit on him? For the record, incredible night on Twitter. One of my favorites. That was so funny. I was just like, this is so dumb. I won't see this movie, but shouts to Chris Pine, man. Yeah, and then there's like, you've got like Screwball with Forrest Pugh, and then Chris Pine, who's like your Riley Green, who's like also really good too.
There's good actors. If I remember, I think, oh my god,
the Tigers aren't too far off, man.
I think Nick Kroll was in that movie.
Oh my god, he might have been.
Yeah, I'm almost positive Nick Kroll was in that movie. Like, it was a good movie. Like,
Shia LaBeouf is in this. Olivia Wilde, obviously the director's in this.
Yes, it had
Nick Kroll,
star power. And I like the Tigers. They got a little bit of star power. You feel me? Like, it's just something's just holding it back.
Amen, man. I love that pick a lot. Let's keep moving though. Chicago White Sox.
Okay.
You can go first. Yeah,
I might get some heat. That's fine. Okay. I'm saying that a lot, but like, I went with another A24 movie, and I went with The Lobster because I think that movie is unwatchable.
That is the ultimate like the cilantro soap gene movie, where like I have never heard someone be like, yeah, it was fine. It is either that is a masterpiece or it is what you just said, which is
and I've heard people who claim it's a masterpiece. I know people like personally who love that movie, and I'm not considering them when I like am using this movie. I literally thought about what was the most unwatchable movie I've ever seen. I had to fight to get through The Lobster. Like, it was an active battle for me to like watch that movie. And like, I felt like I started it and I was like, I cannot turn this off. Colin Farrell's a good actor. Like, Yorgos Lanthimos, a good director. I was like, I'm going to make it through this movie and hope it gets better. It never gets better for me. I think that movie is unwatchable. And so, Chicago White Sox.
I just chose a movie that I saw for the first time very recently. I had heard that it wasn't great. It's just about as dark a movie you can possibly see about everything just falling apart, which the White Sox have. Shouts to Jerry Reinsdorf being the luckiest owner in the history of sports that he stumbled into number 3 in the 1984 NBA draft. Worst team in baseball, historically bad. So I just went full dark. Requiem for a Dream is my pick for this. If you have not seen this movie, frankly, don't.
Okay.
Please don't. It is great. I never want to see it ever again. It is about hard. It is hardcore. Like this is just what drugs do to people. Like that's it. It is with Jared Leto. It is with Jennifer Connelly. It is a good cast. It's got Damon Wayans, I think is his name in it. It's like pretty harrowing. No pun intended. Like genuinely just awful. Like it is just awful stuff the entire time. Does not mince words. It's from Darren Aronofsky. It doesn't mince words, which is what I applaud for it. Frankly, this is what every kid should be shown in like the DARE program. If and again, Google the Wikipedia thing, Google just the ending of this movie.
Yeah.
You'll be content. I promise you, don't watch it. Save yourself. And the only reason I saw it is because Grant Brisbee, legendary Giants writer for The Athletic, has a pinned tweet, I believe, on his account going, "I wish I never saw Requiem for a Dream," in reference to something that says Yaz to Yaz, a tweet that's about that. I'll let everyone's imagination do the rest. Basically, I just thought of the most depressing movie I've ever seen, and that's Requiem for a Dream. So everybody, don't watch it, please. Anyway, moving on now to the AL East. We're going to pick it up just a little bit because we got to, get through a whole bunch of divisions. Yeah. Let's start with currently in first place, I believe as of right now at the time of this recording, is the New York Yankees. What do you got, Harrison?
Quick to the point. The fans of this movie are in my opinion, the epitome of I'm a Yankees, Dallas Cowboys, and LA Lakers fan. And I went with The Wolf of Wall Street. A great movie, really good movie. But if you ask somebody what their favorite movie is, and they tell you it's The Wolf of Wall Street, they are also the person who is a Yankees, Cowboys, and Lakers fan. I promise you, those are their 3 favorites.
Yes. This is so good. And it's like you're not totally sure if they get that movie was not supposed to be how cool Jordan Belfort is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like just over
it's
the
a little
head.
like it's a good movie, but you do have that initial like, but are you one of those Wolf of Wall Street fans? Are you one of those Yankee fans? You know what I mean? Like you're just a little scared. And they might be like, oh yeah, dude, of course I get it. Or they might be like, yeah, man, like what a baller lifestyle. It's like, nah, man, that movie is about how you stink as a human being, and like your life is kind of an empty vessel, even though it looks fun. It's like you are an empty, soulless person. Yeah. I love that pick so much. Oh my god, I'm jealous of that one. I'm honestly shocked that I didn't come up with it. My pick for the Yankees is a recent movie, and basically I'm going with, you know what? They've got 2 A-listers. It's not necessarily, I mean, it's for the actors sort of too, but it's especially for the characters. It is Deadpool and Wolverine. And I'm doing that because it's basically just got 2 giant things, which is the characters of Deadpool and Wolverine. And if you want to say, I personally don't consider Ryan Reynolds an A-lister in the traditional way. I think he's basically never been in any movies that are good outside Deadpool. But Hugh Jackman is certainly great.
Yeah.
I think that this is just 2 things, Aaron Judge and Juan Soto. And then the rest of it is extremely suspect. Yes, I understand. I really did appreciate Jazz just all was awesome for them. I know they actually have other good players, but it's just like that's it sometimes, right? And I think Deadpool and Wolverine was not very good. I think that movie had just a contempt for how movies are made, and it felt like pandering, and it felt just. I just don't understand like how this is happening, like this jangling keys of movie making, where I'm like, but that being said, shouts to them keeping those cameos a secret. I was like impressed. That was the only feat of filmmaking that was impressive in that movie. Is that like I'm genuinely, spoiler alert for the next 15 seconds. Genuinely, I was like, how did you keep Chris Evans secret? That's like a triple A-lister. How did you keep Channing Tatum secret? How did you keep Wesley Snipes secret? Yeah. Genuinely, I was like, I'm impressed by that. I really am.
Yeah.
But also the movie has like no soul, in my opinion. So that's me. Deadpool Wolverine for the Yankees.
Fair enough.
Moving on now to the next team in the division. It is the lovely Baltimore Orioles. I struggled with this one. What about you?
I with a lot of these, I like tried to think of a theme and then would just like what movie fits this. And so honestly, Orioles are my team. I got this one rather quickly, and it's a really like simple point that I'm trying to make. You want me to go?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I went with, we just talked about this movie during our fiasco earlier. I went with Anyone But You. Now hear me out. Hear me out. Listen, a young and attractive team, right? Like the Orioles are super, like that's like their like shtick is like, oh, look at all these prospects we're throwing up at you. And everybody like oohs and ahs at the prospects, right? That's how I feel about Sidney Sweeney and Glenn Powell. Now, Glenn Powell's been around for a while, and I don't think people like realize that, right? Like, I think that's a lot of people think that like Glenn Powell's first thing was Top Gun Maverick, and like, which I feel like it was effectively like the introduction to Glenn Powell for a lot of people, but he's been around for a while. However, he isn't perceived to have been around for a while, so I'm rolling with he's kind of like a new kid on the block, even though he's not. And then Sidney Sweeney, obviously young actress, hasn't like quite gotten her chops yet, and that's how I feel about the Orioles prospects. That and movies are rom-com. A lot of Orioles fans are kind of in that honeymoon phase where like we're good again. Like we were really bad for like 7 years and now we're good again. And so it's like very like rose-colored glasses, rom-com type of feels with the team.
I like it. I like where your head's at. Very, very cool. It's funny that we were just talking about this during our incident off camera. I think, see, for me, I struggle with this. I'm going to get as mean as possible, frankly, because that's just the mood I'm in right now. I'm going to be very mean. I'm going with one of two movies, and that is, and we just talked about him, Jazz Chisholm just walked off for the Yankees. So maybe I can't say Deadpool and Wolverine anymore at the time of this recording. We're recording on September 11th.
The Orioles lost in extra innings, so R.I.P.
My God. I have two movies for this, and it is Barbie or La La Land. Basically, my thinking is with Barbie, ensemble cast, a lot of great players on the Orioles, super fun movie, also very white in its own way. Same thing for La La Land. I will say that La La Land, I mean that more in a derogatory way. That movie has a scene with John Legend that just doesn't age well, in my opinion, where it's like, I don't think we should have white people lecturing black people on jazz. I just don't think that is great. That being said, it is great though. Like it's a great movie, you know what I mean? But it does have that little bit of a vibe. Same thing for Barbie. Again, kind of lazy on my part, kind of offensive on my part. It's my show, whatever. But like, I don't feel great about it, but that's what I thought of because there's so many memes, especially about how all the Orioles players are
all their prospects
like white dudes that look very similar.
There are a ton of memes about that, but which is a little unfortunate, right? Like Samuel Basayo, great prospect. And
they're all great though. Like that's the thing. These are great movies.
Like, and so like it's not quite true. They do not produce the kids in a factory. Like, but yes, there are like 5 prospects that they have that look like they've just been carbon copied.
Yeah, so that's what I'm gonna say. But like I do really like them, and I think the like movie being about white people fits more towards La La Land.
Yeah,
I think that movie is more about like glamorizing Hollywood, especially that era of it, which wasn't always the most diverse and welcoming. Yeah. Barbie is just like, I feel like it's more self-aware about it. You know what I mean? And I don't think La La Land is necessarily
100% more self-aware.
I'm going to go with La La Land. It doesn't have quite the same ensemble as Barbie does, but it does have, you know, some bangers in there, right? Like you've got John Legend in there. You've got Ryan Gosling in there, Emma Stone, Jessica Roth, who I think is extremely underrated. And then someone else that I'm forgetting. Who else was in this damn movie? J.K. Simmons. There we go. That was the last one.
Yeah.
So let's go with La La Land because I think that one is unintentional. While Barbie's like it's making fun of itself and all that. So moving on to the next team, though, we got the Boston Red Sox. I'm going in. I'm coming in hot, Harrison.
Okay.
It is my favorite thing in the world. Not my favorite movie in the world, but my favorite character in the world. I make my entire personality practically about this man, and that is Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Here's why. gonna be really basic. It's pretty good. Low key, I'm not low key. I think everybody knows that the first Spider-Man movie is pretty good, especially these days.
Yeah.
Not the best, but pretty good. Pretty good team. The Red Sox, not too bad. They're both red. I know. And last but not least, a moment of homophobia. There you go. That is my reasoning. Shout out Jared Duran, and shout out when Peter Parker is talking to Bonesaw in the ring. That's my pick. I will not elaborate any further.
Moment of homophobia. That's good. That's good. I went a little bit of a different direction. This gets talked about a little bit, and so we talked about Will Ferrell earlier. I went with Talladega Nights, and
okay,
hear me out. This is like pure just me trying to stretch a metaphor. Fenway Sports Group, that owns the Red Sox and a number of other interests in this case, are Dennett Racing in Talladega Nights. The Red Sox in this case are Ricky Bobby.
Okay.
Liverpool is Sacha Baron Cohen's character, the like F1 driver who comes over and starts racing for Dennett Racing in that movie. That's Liverpool, like the Premier League team. And because my question is, like, what are we committed to? Are we trying to win a World Series, or are we trying to win the Prem and Champions League? Like, what are our priorities?
This is good. Because, you went deep with it, yeah.
Yeah, because in the movie, Dennett Racing brings over this F1 racer and immediately shifts we have this shiny new toy and shifts all of their interest towards him. Now, they've owned Liverpool for a while, right? Like Fenway Sports Group has been like the controlling interest in Liverpool FC for a while, but that is my question. Also, just to complete the metaphor, the Bruins are Cal Naughton Jr., aka John C. Reilly, just kind of an afterthought at the end of the day. Like, great team. The Bruins are like obviously like they're kind of a powerhouse, but a little bit of an afterthought.
Yeah, whenever people are making fun of Boston, they never talk about the Bruins. You know what I mean? Like they're always like Celtics, Red Sox, Patriots, and the Bruins were like, yeah, we don't like you because you're Boston, but like we don't hate you. You know what I mean?
They slide under the radar. And granted, I know a lot of hockey fans that hate the Bruins, but I
feel that, man. It's not bad. I feel like we've been cooking, man. Next up, the Tampa Bay Rays. For this one, I didn't want to go like in the super dark direction, frankly, that I could have gone. That's like a super serious thing. I didn't want to go in that direction. Instead, I went with I recently wrote about Just Baseball, The Fallacy. If anybody wants to see this, about the Tampa Bay Rays and this idea of what they're doing being good for baseball. I don't think that's true. And I used a meme of Dr. Manhattan from the movie Watchmen. And the movie's known for he just sits there being like the same things happening over and over. For me, I feel like this is the same Rays we always know it over and over. I think that they should be forgiven in terms of this particular enter of a rebuild. I think even teams that do spend would have a hard time overcoming their Cy Young caliber ace having Tommy John surgery, and then their shortstop of the future being just a piece of shit. Leave it at that. Even that, I'm like, you know what? I get why you guys were like, let's hit reset this time. But all in all, it feels like the same thing. And that's why I am citing Watchmen, the movie from Zack Snyder. Yes, it's an adaptation type of movie and whatnot, but I'm basically building this off of Dr. Manhattan's like nihilistic view of like nothing matters if we're just doing the same thing over. And that's what the Rays are doing, the same thing over and over. They're not spending and they have to rebuild. That's my take. And also blue. So there you go.
All right, I went maybe this is like pandering a little. I also common theme. I think that I have more A24 movies on this list than anybody else.
Yeah, so you've got a lot.
Went with The Florida Project.
Okay. Okay.
Keep it simple. Florida Project, low budget, great movie. That's kind of like the Rays' MO, right? We're not going to spend a lot of money, but we're going to give you a good team. We're going to give, pretty much year in, year out, we're going to give you a team that wins 80 to 95 games and call it a day. And that's how I feel about The Florida Project. Really good movie. I like it a lot. And they did a lot with, considering the budget. Willem Dafoe's in it. It's fun.
Yeah. Willem Dafoe. I love Willem Dafoe, one of my favorite actors. So that's one of my immediate to watch list.
Keep it simple for that one.
Yeah, I like that. Last team of the division, the Toronto Blue Jays. Mine is a little bit of a deep cut. It is a movie called Don't Think Twice, starring a bunch of people that people have heard of before. Gillian Jacobs, Keegan-Michael Key, like you've heard of those two before,
Yeah.
and some other. Ben Stiller, I believe, pops up in it. It's basically about a group of friends, a comedy group who's trying to make it big. And basically, this movie, it kind of goes from the allure of like, look how great we look on paper, and then it just doesn't fully pan out that way. Like you had the dreams, right? Remember when the Blue Jays were the most exciting team in baseball? You had the dreams, and it just didn't go that way. But it doesn't end in like a tragic way. There's still a little bit of hope left. And that's kind of Don't Think Twice, where it's like everybody eventually comes to peace, basically. Really great movie. I recommend it. It can be a little bit heartbreaking at points, but the end is very like just very mature. You know what I mean? A mature movie about this is not Requiem for a Dream type of ending, but it's also not Rocky Balboa. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like a middle ground. I recommend it. It's got some good people in it. Check it out.
Okay. I went with a coming of age movie, right? Because I feel like this was a very
My favorite.
Yeah, I thought this was a really like pivotal year for the Blue Jays. Like, what are we going? Like, how do we move forward from here? Right? It was all: do we trade? Do we trade Vladdy? Do we trade Bichette? Like, how do we move forward from this year where we were supposed to be really good and we just aren't? And so I went with the way back.
I love. Okay, do it.
Yeah, so I went with the way back. If you haven't seen it, it is, in my opinion, a really good coming of age movie. I also love that Steve Carell was cast in this movie in a very non-comedic manner. Like,
yeah, this was like kind of the beginning of that, of him being like, "Hey, I can do other things."
Funny. Yeah, he was not funny at all in this movie.
Yeah, he's a prick.
He's
and a
prick.
specific, real prick, not a cartoon villain.
No,
right?
like a legit asshole. Like,
yeah, and like a very like you've met these people. This is a movie. There are 3 movies that I've told people that describe my life, just to get deep as we're in the hour to this podcast. There are 3 movies that I've told people, and I won't explain why, that they explain my life and me as a person. It is The Way Back.
Okay.
It is Creed, and then it is Stand By Me. Those 3 movies describe my life and how I am as a person and how I feel as a person. For The Way Back, I'm basically the kid, right? Like that's basically how I was growing up, especially in more ways than one. That could be shared at another time and explained further. But I love that. Great pick, man. I love that movie. I think it's really good. Flawed for sure. It's not amazing.
Oh, no,
but
it's not
I like the Steve Carell mention. Like I think that was the beginning of like, hey, he could do more than that. So love that pick. Very, very cool. Now we move on to the National League. Not gonna lie, we're an hour into this. I'm almost wondering if it should be saved for another episode. Hold on, let me think.
Maybe. I was kind of thinking that maybe because this has I thought about this before we even started recording. I was like, this is a lot of movies to get through.
Yeah, I know. We're like an hour. You know what? We're pivoting in the middle of this podcast. We are going to be doing part 2 of this podcast next week, talking about the National League teams and what every movie we have for them is. So until that time, Harrison, it's been a blast having you on. Pivoted hard in the middle of this. That's pretty crazy and not a good job of me as hosting. But you know what? I gotta create some episodes, man. Like I gotta stretch this out a little bit, have more shows and episodes, be more consistent for you guys. Harrison, if you have anything to plug for the good people out there, go give them a shout.
I mean, listen, I really don't. You can follow me on Twitter at Harrison Bruns. If you're like watching this on YouTube, it's at the bottom, like right there. So I mean, give me a follow on Twitter. Other than that, I mean, I appreciate all the Just Baseball fans out there. Keep reading articles, listening to podcasts. It's great. I'm ecstatic to be a part of it.
Well said, sir. Everybody, that about does it for this episode of the greatest podcast ever, of course. Check me out on Twitter personally for a bunch of other nonsense at Javipeno, Javiiipeno, the best handle in the game. And be sure to follow the show account at Baseball vs. World on Twitter for clips of the show. Same thing goes for the YouTube and also on the Instagram as well. And with that said, that about does it for another episode, the 15th, in fact, of Baseball versus the World, the podcast about how baseball relates to the rest of the world and how the rest of the world relates to baseball. Until that next time, everybody, stay golden and stay loving all things baseball.